So glad to have you with us. And what a week to be talking to you, man. WWE Extends SmackDown. Now we've got Bryan Danielson and Minoru Suzuki. This back and forth stuff is, well, it's an amazing time for a wrestling fan. What do you think about all the moves being made?
Really don't know much about it because I really don't pay attention to anything that's going on other than our show.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that WWE is extending SmackDown and whatever else you just said. But to me, the most important thing is it's the debut of former UFC champion Junior Dos Santos in the ring, in an AEW ring. And I think that's probably the biggest story of the week as far as I'm concerned, especially with Jorge Masvidal in their corner. So glad to see there's lots of buzz going on with everything not involving Chris Jericho. But in the words of Chris Jericho, I really don't give a shit about anything that's not going on. That's not Chris Jericho. So I've got enough to worry about this week as it is.
Well, I'd love to get into that too. I mean, Masvidal, by the way, he's taken on a compatriot of mine now. That's been made official, Leon Edwards, at UFC the next month. Is he going to make it, Chris? Because if he gets into it, I mean, you might have to, and he's already laid that knee on you, man.
Well, once again, I think that's something that's very unique here with what we're doing with American Top Team and Dan Lambert and AEW is the fact that these are like not retired UFC guys.
Yeah.
These are guys that are still in the thick of things and still in the mix of what's going on. And I think probably Masvidal is one of the biggest names in their sport in the world today. And like I said, and the fact that Junior's actually having the match with us as a former UFC champion, it's a whole different thing for me because I've never really been on that side of it. I remember when I first got to WWF, 1,000 years ago, I worked with Ken Shamrock briefly, but this is a whole different vibe. And it's something that when we started doing this story with America's Top Team and Dan Lambert, I was really kind of interested and intrigued because it is something completely different. There's nobody else in there doing it with the UFC guys. And of course with Dan Lambert, who's just a complete natural when it comes to being an asshole, a complete natural when it comes to getting heat, to the point as last week when we were in Philadelphia, I could literally not hear a word he was saying after he kind of stepped in with doing kind of the promo battles and all that sort of stuff with Chris Jericho. So once again, as soon as we started getting involved, I thought, what can we do? What can I do to make this guy super hot and super hated? And we've kind of made that work right off the bat very quickly. So it's going to be really, really cool to see Jorge in there, man. I mean, yeah, like you said, the knee he hit me with was pretty vicious. But I wouldn't expect anything different. These guys are not trained pro wrestlers doing tackles, drop downs, and leapfrogs. They mount you, they punch you in the face, and they knee you in the cranium. And that's kind of what you're buying when you get these guys involved. So it's a little bit more dangerous, but it's really cool. It's exciting, and more than anything else that's ever really been done before. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I'll get into Junior Dos Santos in a minute, but just harking back to Masvidal and that knee. I remember listening to you talk about, when you was in there with Tyson and him trying to pull that punch and being, who wouldn't be bloody terrified of that? With Masvidal, was there any kind of discussion before, like, oh man, or are you just gonna see where the chips fall?
Well, I mean, that's basically it. See where the chips fall. Because the thing is, yeah, I mean, those guys are tough, but I don't know, there's nobody tougher in the business than wrestlers. So it's one of those things where, how bad can it be? I've been knocked out by a lot tougher, and I've been knocked out by a lot less. So, I remember the story when Paul White was in his WrestleMania angle with Floyd Mayweather and just said, punch me in the face as hard as you can. And Mayweather broke his nose. And it's like, well, it sucks, but it's kind of what we do. And it's part of how we do our business. And, with Mike Tyson standing there getting ready for him to take a swing at me 10 years ago in Minneapolis, not knowing what you're going to get, you are pretty crazy. So it's the same thing with Masvidal on his knee. I've seen him knock guys out. I've seen him beat, Ben Askren in 5 seconds with that knee. So when he's coming across the ring, charging with this, it's almost kind of like Kenny's V trigger, except for this one has legit wins behind it. So you just kind of, grit your teeth and hope for the best. And if it gets people involved in what we're doing, and it gets people involved in the story, and it adds to, eyeballs watching, well, then it was all worth it. Doesn't feel too good the next day, but once again, there's nobody crazier than me as it is. So I don't mind. I'm ready.
And you'll be ready for Dos Santos, my man, this Saturday. I mean, it's a crazy one when you think about it. Like you said, no experience, of course, extremely decorated in all the things that he's done.
Right.
Are these the kind of challenges that really excite Chris Jericho at this point, right? Like you look at this and you think, man, I could make something out of this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of been my mindset for years now. Like, I have a lot of people saying, like, when are you going to wrestle CM Punk, or when are you wrestling Kenny again for, Jericho Omega 3, or when are you and Sammy going to go for the titles, or whatever it may be. Those things are all there. And of course, I'm like, I watched Danielson and Omega in New York City and go, holy shit, was that ever amazing? Like, that was so great. I would have loved to have been a part of that. But there's also, the thing that we do in AEW is there's something for everybody. I like the fact that we're in there with this whole group of guys that really has no idea what wrestling is. Every week they're in there and you can see them almost starry-eyed because it's different from being in the cage. Now, if I was in the cage with them, I'd probably feel the same way, where you're like this is a little bit out of my element, but we're working, with them to put on the best show possible. And to me, I like that. I like doing stuff that's a little bit different. There's a lot of guys having great matches in AEW on a weekly basis. There's nobody that's facing these UFC fighters and kind of corralling them and harnessing them to, we have to put an AEW pro wrestling spin on it. And I think we've done a great job of that. I mean, when they did the original beatdown in New York City, I think people were a little bit shocked as to what was happening. But then when we came down and did the run in last week, Jake and I with Sammy and kind of turned the tables. I mean, you heard the reaction. It was crazy. It was absolutely insane with what kind of a response that we got. And then when Lambert started talking as well. And that's to me where I'm like, okay, this is working. This is fun. And I'll go out on a limb and say there's probably not many guys in the business who could get complete strangers over to that level very quickly. But I know what I'm doing as far as what I'm dealing with and the pieces of this puzzle. So, yeah, it's very intriguing for me. It's very exciting. I love the fact that Lambert is probably the most hated heel in AEW right now. And he's working with Chris Jericho. So that's no coincidence. So it's been I like having a story to tell, and we know kind of where we're going with this. But with Junior, once again, he's never been in a wrestling ring. And I don't want him to come in as a trained pro wrestler, because that's not what he is. He is an MMA champion. That's why he is in the position he's in. So we'll have some training sessions, not with me, but with some of our guys that are, the Sean Spears of the world and those type of guys that run their own wrestling school, because obviously we want him to feel comfortable inside the ring. But the last thing we want is, like I said, tackle, drop down, leapfrog, drop kick. I want, punch the face, punch the stomach, maybe hit the ropes once or twice, learn a few kicks, something like that, just to be aware of his surroundings. But overall, it's exciting. And I think it's going to be a great night on Friday with something completely different. That's going to be pretty exciting as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more on all of that. And I think you said it there with Dan Lambert and American Top Team. Pretty fascinating how they're integrating. They've got like people like Paige Van Zant who could easily transition. Do you think there's a lot of potential between Dan and his troops into AEW?
Absolutely. I mean, Paige is part of the story. I remember the first week she came out and I was like, well, we need Paige here next week. And I was like, you want her there? I'm like, she's part of the story now.
She looks natural.
And she's a natural. Exactly. Like, you can see right away, okay, that guy, his stuff looks great. This guy's into it. She feels the character part of it. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't even really have to do anything. I said to her last week, just come out and act like a bitch. That's all you got to do. And she did, and people are booing her. And I think everybody loves, if you get it, everyone loves being the bad guy. Where like, oh, they're so cool, they're booing me, and they're telling me that I suck. And you can't get that in UFC. You're not going to get that. You're just going to get more of a sports environment where we have the whole, kind of fan involvement and fan reaction, which is second to none, especially in AEW with our fans. So I think they're feeling that, and they've all come out of the ring and been super stoked and excited after. That was so great. This is awesome, because it's something different for them. And they're embracing it as well. So, it's not easy to be a pro wrestler, to have a career in the business, and to really make it to the top and become one of the best. It's not easy to make one appearance, but it's a little bit better if you can help somebody relate to it the way they relate to what they do. Like with Mike Tyson, he's perfect for wrestling because we always keep him as Iron Mike Tyson. He's a loose cannon. He does whatever the hell he wants. whenever Mike's around, people go, what you should have done? You should have had him come down and confront MJF, and MJF then disappears. And then I was like, no, you guys don't get it. Iron Mike Tyson is going to do what he wants. If you have Iron Mike and MJF confront each other and Mike's had enough or doesn't want to do it, he'll just punch him in the face. And there goes a whole storyline out the window. That's what we want. And the same thing with the American Top Team and Junior Dos Santos and Jorge Masvidal. We want them to be themselves and still have that connection to the MMA world that they have, which is what brought them here in the first place. We'll do the rest as far as getting that over in a pro wrestling environment.